All right, I think we are live. Thank you for joining me today in Hype Auditor's latest webinar on creating better performing sponsored content. We'll be letting folks take a minute or two to join. So we'll get started a couple of minutes past the hour. Just a reminder as we're waiting for folks to join that all of this will be recorded. We'll actually be able to access this recording or live stream via the link that was shared that you're on right now on YouTube. So if you want to pass it along to colleagues, you can do so very, very easily. We'll also post it online in case you need to find it again later. But if you're looking for tips on how to create better performing sponsored content, maybe you've got last minute things that have crept up just ahead of Black Friday, which is only a couple of days away, you're in the right place. Though if you're trying to do something now, just ahead of Black Friday, no promises. It might be a little bit too late for that. As I mentioned, we'll get started in a minute or two while I have a captive audience. Next week, we'll be continuing our live webinar series. So what this is actually going into the web app and doing something, right? So we'll be using some of our market analysis and competitive insights tools to dive into Cyber 5 winners. So people from this Cyber 5, so the one that's coming up in a few days, just a couple of days after that, we'll be using some of our reporting and tooling to see who sort of moved and shook, who made really, really great gains, try to derive some insights around types of people that they're partnering with, what content was working, what wasn't working, where were they investing most of their efforts. So be sure to join me next Friday, December 1st. Somehow we're at the very, very end of the year as well, which is pretty crazy to be thinking about. So again, we'll be waiting about one more minute for folks to join. But just a little bit of housekeeping. If you're here, we're going to be talking about how to create better performing sponsored content. Again, this will be recorded. If you have any questions or comments or insights, things that you'd like to share with the group, please go ahead and post them in the chat. We'll also hold for a Q&A at the very, very end, but feel free to send them along. I like to just do it as we're going through. It just makes it a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interesting. So with that, I think I've stalled enough. There's been a few more folks that have joined. So again, join next week. We'll have our live series where we'll be diving into some competitive analysis tools and insights tools, trying to break down who won Cyber 5. But today we're here to talk about how to create more compelling, more impactful, more profitable sponsored content. So we're going to hit three main topics. So the first is essentials for giving your content a chance to succeed in the first place. There are things that if you don't take care of, no amount of magic content is going to fix it, right? There's essential components that you have to get right, as with all things digital marketing, regular marketing. So we'll dive into those essentials. We'll tie into some basics of all content, things that you have to have in all content. And then we'll dive into some of the approaches to sponsor content that drive really strong engagement, really strong performance, just from some of the data and research that we've dove into. Once again, this will be recorded. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and post them in the chat. We'll share this recording after this. Also, you can just use the link that you're on right now. My name is Ryan Hilliard. If you've not joined one of these webinars before, I'm the General Manager of Americas here at Hype Auditor. And my colleague Nick and I have put together this content for you all. So we hope that you enjoy it. Hope you find it insightful. And again, definitely ask your questions. So a little bit around the methodology for how we're trying to understand good content, bad content, what makes up good content. So we looked across number of brands, number of different industries, as well as other research that's out there to try to compile a picture of what makes content engaging, what ultimately drives sales and revenue as measured through that engagement, and what doesn't, what things are critical that you have to have in place in order to ever be successful. So that's a little bit around the methodology that we use here. Spoiler, there's no perfect piece of content, right? There's a lot of ducks that have to be in a row in order to see some success, but we want to give you guys some inspiration around ideas, some best practices to follow, some understanding why sometimes things don't work out well, even though maybe it worked the first time and it's the same format. So we'll be diving into that. So first steps with creating compelling content, this is really, I know everybody's here really to think about like, how can I make better sponsored content, better posts, better videos, better streams, reels, whatever it might be. But you don't want to underestimate the rest of the funnel, right? So number one is you really need to have a good understanding of the consideration around your product. Is this something that is expensive, requires a lot of research? Is it, a mattress that somebody's going to commit to for 8 to 10 years? If you know that is the case, then you need to approach whatever content you're doing with, okay, this is a very, very considered purchase. This is going to take time. Where are these people in their research phase? Who am I reaching? Like, where in this audience are they? If they're people that are really already thinking about purchasing, maybe you're going to be partnering up with somebody that reviews a lot of mattresses, right? That's a different format of content than if you're talking to somebody that is more of a brand awareness play, right? So if you're thinking about promoting a product that is a more considered purchase, maybe it has a better margin so you can really adopt some heavy advertising. You need to be taking that in consideration when you're evaluating the results that you're going to get, when you're measuring the performance that you see, because it's not going to be as immediate as, oh, that was interesting, now let me go buy a mattress. You might see a little bit of that, but for the most part, if it's something considered, it's just going to take time. So when you're thinking about content, you want to be thinking about follow-ups to that. How do you pull people into a funnel where you can market to them later, that you can email them later, not just that immediate sale, right? So product consideration, where in the process is this? If this is a $8 phone case, that's a whole different world than if this is something that costs $200 that you buy once every 5 years, right? And consideration, that price point, there isn't a magic threshold. It isn't $1,000 or $200. It really is, how frequent is this thing purchased? How frequently is it used? Is this something that feels more disposable, or something that just is going to sit on your desk for a long time, right? So those are definitely important factors to have in place. The next is making sure when you're approaching this content that you have a really solid offer in place, especially if you want direct response, right? If you're doing a branding play, if you're trying to grow some awareness around what you're doing as a company, you want people to be more familiar with you as a brand, heavy discounts aren't always essential, because that's not the purpose. The purpose isn't to drive a sale. But if your goal is to drive a sale, and in 3 days, that's going to be probably the purpose for most of the people here, you need to have a clear reason why people should buy now and not tomorrow or next week, next month, or next year, right? There needs to be a very, very clear reason, motivation. And this is tied to just directly an offer that will go away, right? A solid offer is really, really important if you want to drive a sale now. So time bound it, have a solid offer, really, really important. Even if it is a considered purchase, right? Mattress companies all the time will have sales that last a couple of weeks. The reason that you do that is that you want people to come see the sale, and then you understand that they're going to go through that research process, and it might take them a week just to decide to buy something. So you need to give people enough time, because they're not going to pull the trigger prematurely on a considered purchase just because you're saying sale expires tomorrow. Trust me, it just doesn't happen that way. So solid offer. Good landing page. This is basic, but people often forget this, and I've got a horror story that I could share a little bit later about something like this. The ability to purchase, how easy is it? How straightforward is it? How logical is it? How familiar is it? That's going to really dictate the sales that you get, right? If you hid the checkout button in white, right, and your pet website's all white, and the font's also white, people aren't going to buy, even if the offer is amazing, even if the content was tremendous. Finding that needs to be simple. You need to make sure that you're putting people into a funnel that you know converts well. And if you know that you have known problems, you just need to go into it aware that you're going to realize that in terms of the results. It's not going to be just because of the partnership. It might be, well, we know we make people register in order to purchase, and registration is going to make people drop out, or we make them do a subscription. Those things might be essential for your business, but they're going to be things that hurt your conversion. So you just need to be ready for that and be prepared going into it when you're thinking about partnership. And the last one is the right audience. This is probably the most important piece to placing the right content. Is you want to make sure that you're placing it in front of the right person at the right stage. Are we reaching a buyer? Are we reaching a researcher? Are we trying a new type of person? All of those things are going to dictate the results and how ready people are to purchase. So making sure that you're using your due diligence to find, hey, this influencer has the people where I want them to be for this partnership to take action. If you have the wrong makeup of audience, even if you're giving them plenty of time to consider this tremendous offer for this great product, it still might not resonate. You probably won't see those results. So this is all homework you do beforehand before you even get to the content. And it really ultimately will dictate a lot of the results that you see. You can have average creative, but if you've got a good offer, a good funnel, and you're in front of the right person, you're going to see results that exceed what you're aiming for. You're going to see that ROI that you want to hit. Now, if you're hitting the wrong audience, but you have everything else right, you're going to run into problems, right? If you have perfect content execution, great partnerships, great alignment with those partners, but you have a horrible offer, if it's not clear why you should buy right now and you're missing the audience, you're just not going to see results. So these are all groundwork that you want to do beforehand. You want to have a compelling offer, understand where the purchase is, the right audience, and then you can move to, okay, so now what should we do with creative, right? So creating more impactful sponsored content. The goal here is, how do you drive up engagement, drive up eventual sales or direct sales, depending on what you're trying to do. If that's your objective, right? You want to try to drive that specific action. Now, if your goal is, I just want brand awareness, I want people to see me in a certain light, maybe you're going to be thinking about this a little bit differently. Now, you're still going to want to have a specific approach to content, but some of these things just may not apply because your goal is just, we want people to see us as we are. Think about all of the fragrance commercials you're going to see over the next 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the holidays, where it's very, very vivid imagery that you associate with this particular fragrance company. It's not super direct, but it's just all about awareness. And that's okay. Some of these things just won't apply. But if you're thinking direct response, if you're thinking engagement, that's what really this is built for. Some of the basics. So we talked about touching the basics. This is just one slide where we're going to limit the basics here. Same with all digital marketing, influencer marketing, affiliate marketing, brand ambassador programs. None of these are an exception to the rule. You have to have a clear call to action. What do you want the person to do? If you don't clearly state what you want them to do, they will do literally everything. It might seem super logical to you, but it needs to be clear. You need to say, I would like you to do this now. Buy now, right? Order now, order today. That needs to be super obvious. Just like on your website, it needs to be super obvious to purchase now. So clear to call to action. Discount codes throughout. So if you're doing videos, if you're doing stories, it needs to be mentioned by the influencer. If you're doing a post associated with that story, it needs to be in the content. It needs to be in the caption. You want to make sure that this is everywhere, right? The goal here is to drive up the sales, not say, well, I wonder if we mention this code just here, will people buy, right? Because people are going to be consuming this content in different places and in different sort of mindsets. And so you don't know which one is going to be the trigger to actually buy, right? And so you want to make sure that they're always armed with everything. Here's the code that you need. Here's the clear call to action. If now's the right time, you have everything you need. Not, oh, I guess I'll save it later and try to track down that code. That doesn't work. That's how you lose people in this process. Always prioritize the very, very beginning. Don't bury the lead. Make sure that you have compelling imagery, something that's going to drive them to engage with this content, to read further, to watch more. If you put the interesting stuff at the end, most of the time they won't get to it, right? That's why we lead off with an agenda here, talk about different things, because I want you guys to see what we're going to talk about today, make sure it's interesting. It's also why I sneak in the advertisement for the webinar next week, because I know that I have a slide at the very, very end, but by the time I get there, some of y'all will have gone, right? So we need to make sure that we have your attention, we capture your attention really, really early, and then always time-bound offers. During the holidays, it's super logical just to time-bound things, but you want to give people a window to take action. It also gives you a good window to evaluate if this is working or not. The longer you go, the less opportunity you really have to evaluate, is this successful or not? The more you're going to stretch out those purchase days, those purchase decisions, make them shorter. When I was working at an agency a few years back, one of my clients, they sold mattresses. One thing that they did that was really, really compelling is they always have short sale windows that would get extended by short periods of time and then extended again. And you would see these spikes the first day of the sale be slow, and then the last day of the sale. And then you would see it again the last day of the extension, and then the last day of the extension, because there is some consideration, there is some process of people just coming across this. And so you do want to give people time. But if you said you've got 2 weeks to act on this, right? we're thinking about buying a new stove, new range. And at Lowe's, there's like this 30-day period of like, this is going to be the lowest price for the next 30 days. Well, I'm just going to wait until the very last day to make a decision, right? There's no incentive for me to act any earlier. And so they try to instill, these sort of artificial incentives of, oh, last day through the 15th, and then on the 16th, it says through the 22nd. Those types of things can work. So you always want to try to time bound things that you're working with folks. And especially for the holidays, it makes sense for Cyber 5, but then after Cyber 5, getting ahead of that last ship day, going into the new year around different sales, just try to keep things time bound and do that with everything, not just with influencer marketing. So those are our basics. We covered some of the musts at the very, very beginning around landing pages and offers and clarity and understanding, is this considered a purchase? So now let's go into some of the content, right? So one of the things that we found that was really, really apparent in terms of driving a lot of success, and this really works for smaller influencers. It's harder when they're mass influencers. And I think maybe even some verticals lend themselves a little better to this than that. But prioritizing the value and the emotional feel of the product or the service over the product itself. What is the benefit of this? That's going to drive greater engagement. It's going to help your audience put themselves in the shoes of that follower that's following that creator. They say, yeah, I hate having to make snacks for my children too. It's such a pain in the neck. This is a great idea. Oh, this makes it super, super easy, right? And then even having those creators extrapolate that value, because I save time putting together snacks. I'm ready to just run out the door. I get to do X, Y, Z, right? I get to spend more time with my children. I get to do whatever it might be. In some cases, it might be a little bit of a stretch, but really highlighting value and feeling. This is the marketing basic, but this is essential. And a lot of times just focus on product only. And unless your product is truly unique, and we'll talk about it in the next one, if your product isn't super, super unique, if it's just a container, you're not going to see the results that you're looking for. So try to focus on emotion. That's sort of the takeaway here. Now, if you do have some unique features, you can always tie them into like how they drive that emotion. I really like this about this, but really that feeling, that value that you get. Now, let's say you do have a unique product, right? You do have something that is interesting. It has a component that's patented or whatever it might be, something that is why people like this. You definitely want to make sure that you're featuring that unique point of differentiation in the content with the creator, with anything sponsored that you're doing, anything that you're just doing organically. And it's particularly impactful, we found, when creators call those features out. Like, what I like about this extra wallet is if I push this little button, my cards pop up. It's just super easy to get at my credit cards, but the wallet's still slim. And this is awesome. This is my favorite thing about it. It gives something relatable. It points people to something that is unique. So it's not just something you can get everywhere else. So it does make it super, super tangible. It's a little bit less of a pure emotion and value play, but it still should tie in. Like, it's just easier when I'm checking out to just pull my card out, right? This is just easy. But it features that unique product feature front and center within the context of like, hey, this is why I'm promoting this. So don't bury those wow factors. Don't only lean on those either, but it's a balance, but you want to make sure that you have them. Now, if you're selling more of a standard product, right, or you're doing more of a brand play, then you just have to find, how do I have that hook here? Right. And maybe this isn't going to be the same for everybody. If it's dog food, maybe it doesn't make any sense. Right. But just something to think about. All right. Next format, making something a Q&A, right? So whether it's an actual Q&A or if it's just an influencer talking about things with their audience as if it was a Q&A, those can be really, really engaging because they give sort of an insight into the creator themselves. And if the creator can then tie in your product, right? In this case, hey, somebody that's a sort of finance guru, this is how I interact when I'm doing my budgeting and planning. And they mentioned you need to budget this product, right? It feels very authentic. It feels very real. It's very, very tangible how you interact with this. You get a lot of engagement because people are asking questions about the product, which will inspire other people reading those comments. And so this is a really, really good format for driving engagement, for driving authenticity. One other approach that we found in a couple of cases I thought was really, really interesting is even doing a live Q&A with that creator, somebody from your team and that creator, just talking through things, not a pure advertisement, but just talking about, whatever relates to them as to why you reached out. In this case, a finance person, talking to them about how they got into this, what's most interesting, what are things that they're thinking about. That drives a lot of additional value for your audience, and then still has that hook of you being sort of the sponsor here. So that glimpse really drives a lot of good engagement. So Q&A is a good format to approach. Avoid things. So lifestyle, pure lifestyle. If the product or service isn't obvious, is something that we see as a sort of a no-no. Now, this is coming from firsthand experience. So my sort of horror story from my past, we had a product where it was a program embedded within a mobile app where it's like you download a free app, then you could upgrade to this paid program. So you can already tell a couple of things I was talking about, like you have to download, you have to register, you have to authenticate, then you have to find this paid thing within the mobile app. Already my funnel's a little bit disjointed. And one thing that we then leaned into was like this more lifestyle sort of image. And there was a complete disconnect into like, hey, we're partnering with this creator to do this thing, but their audience isn't even seeing that. They just see a person in front of a sunset or a person exercising, and they're not making that connection at all. And so then when it ends up happening is you might see all of this engagement. Oh yeah, look at this family interacting in front of the TV. There's no clear product or solution being offered. So this engagement isn't going to provide a whole lot of value to you as the brand partnering with them, right? You're going to be hoping, I sure hope that they read the content and that they see the brand that I partnered with. It's just not going to be super obvious. And so you want to make sure that it is a bit more straightforward and a bit more clear. So in this case, if this family sort of candid photo was trying to partner with a specific type of toy, let's remove a lot of the other clutter and like make that the sort of central thing that is interesting, right? It needs to be that sort of core interesting thing that draws people's attention. What is that? Or where did you get that? Or whatever. That makes the messaging much more clear, makes it much more aligned, and you're going to see results there. Now, maybe you'll see fewer likes, but in this case, all of the engagement is going to drive a whole lot of value for the brand. But sure, yeah, you got a lot of notoriety, but there's just not that connection. Had a question come in from Joanne around collaborations being candid. Is it legal to make it look super candid? Aren't we obligated to state that it's an ad? Yes, you always want to make sure that you're clear around whether or not this is a partnership or a sponsorship or an advertisement. Of course, we have a really, really good webinar that we did with the social media lawyer about 2 months ago, where we talked around things that you have to have in content. I think the emphasis on candid isn't let's be sneaky and do sneaky product placement, but it's let's make sure that this feels very, very authentic with what this person normally talks about, what they normally post about, what they actually do. And so it's up to you as the brand just to make sure that you're finding the right person that you're partnering with so that it makes a lot of sense, right? If you are selling Caraway cookware, your Caraway, and you're partnering with somebody who is not in your target demographic at all, and neither is in their audience, and it looks very authentic, it might still not drive any value, right? So you still have to make sure that you're making those right selections, but you want it to feel natural. So like in a Q&A, for example, yeah, you definitely would still want to say, this Q&A is sort of sponsored by this, or I'm partnering with them, and one thing I love about them, or whatever it might be. You want to disclose that, but that doesn't mean that most of the content can't just be about this candid conversation. Now, you do want to relate it, right? Similar to how this image, this lifestyle image, you want to make sure that people can see that connection, that it isn't just, like you sponsoring an event, right? People need to be able to connect that. Otherwise, you won't see a whole lot of value, but it can still be very real and authentic. It's actually better if it's not just an advertisement for your product, similar to how we do these webinars and they have good engagement because we're just talking about things that are valuable to you guys as marketers, not just meeting people to do a commercial. So yes, you can balance it, but you do definitely want to disclose if it's a sponsorship or an advertisement. Actually, if it's really, really authentic, we didn't see any impact on engagement rate or even purchase rate in those cases. But it has to be content that fits in with what this influencer is normally doing. Great question. Honest reviews. If you have a good partnership with somebody, letting them open up about things they really, really like, things that they're trying to get used to, they can paint them in more positive lights, right? But let's say you have a product that has sort of this deficiency that you're aware of, saying, hey, one thing I'm trying to still figure out is this, but I really like this. And I'm looking forward to, understanding how I'm going to interact with that in the future. I'm getting a little bit better. Like those things are just real, right? So there's no avoiding them. They exist. And so actually embracing it, not shining a bright light on it where you emphasize something that somebody doesn't like, but making it more real, more candid is going to drive up engagement. It'll also overcome some of the things that you might run into when somebody buys this product and says, hey, I didn't know it did this. You would actually say, oh yeah, well, I was aware. I'm sort of overlooking that because the person I saw the product, the sponsored product post from also is overlooking that deficiency. So honest reviews. What I really like about this, bring it to earth. One thing that I'm working on, or one thing that I don't like about this, or one thing that, I'm looking forward to them doing is X, right? Those things just make it much more real. Now, obviously it's up to you as the brand, as you're going through this, as you're reviewing content. If it's like a giant red flag, if it's going to really mess with things, you just say, hey, can we talk about something else? You want to find a balance there, but it's okay to call out, hey, we're not an A+ product. We're like an A or an A-, right? That's still great. And it feels a bit more authentic and attainable to the audience. So reviews. Incorporating polls. This is sort of an obvious one, but sometimes like we were surprised at how inoften it appeared. People asking questions of their audience when it came to actual sponsored product placements. This drives really, really good engagement with the content. It also gets them really thinking about what they're seeing in most cases. And so this is just another approach to trying to make the content a little bit more interesting, not just another video, not just me talking head, but actually trying to drive true engagement here. You can link to more things, obviously, but just more polls. We saw really, really high engagement rates, as well as subsequently, most of these things seemed oriented towards driving direct response. And so we would see that sort of translate into direct response. So incorporating polls is another approach. So we went quickly, but we're about half an hour past almost. The point of emphasis here is like a lot of these approaches that we identify just from our quick digging, there's not a single way to do sponsored content, right? A lifestyle image of a influencer walking off in the distance without seeing their face with a beautiful sunset. Sure, that could be engaging. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to drive results. And it might drive results one time. It might not drive results the other time, because what really will matter is, do you have the right offer, the right audience? Is the product consideration correct? Like all of those other pieces are really important to driving the outcome that you want as an advertiser. Making sure that that messaging is super, super clear. The call to action is super clear, that people see the relationship between this post and the sponsorship so that they know what to do. Being sneaky in that case won't drive any value for you. You'll get lots of likes on this influencer's content, but you'll get no clicks through to your website. So there's no single approach or format. It's all about balancing driving engagement on the platform with, am I reaching the right person? Do I have a compelling reason for them to buy now? So keep that in mind, especially over the next 2 days. So just to wrap up, we talked through first steps, making sure that your ducks are in a row with your offers, with your landing pages. Try to avoid things that you know are hangups with your existing purchase experience. If you've got problems with conversion right now, sending a bunch of traffic through an influencer isn't going to fix it, right? You need to still address those things to drive up sales. Next, check the basics. Always clear call to action. Always show the codes, say the codes. The codes need to be pervasive. That's why it's always better to put the code at the top of the website, even if it's something site-wide. You don't want to hide it to make people use it, because you're going to end up giving refunds anyway. Engaging opening, right? Call attention. Huge thing in terms of virality for influencers on YouTube is like that opening card, that preview card. is huge for driving that click through to the initial video and then teasing out what's in the video. That same mindset should be in the content that you're working with an influencer. Obviously, give them some creative freedom, but is this a hook? Is this engaging? Are people going to really watch this? And then time-bound offers. Lastly, we talked about all of these different approaches, work across different networks, so definitely incorporate those. I'm going to pause for a sip of water while I'm grabbing that water. If you have any questions, comments, Joni, thank you for jumping in initially. Feel free to send them along. You can send them along over email as well. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I don't see any additional comments coming in. So while I still have this captive audience of 12 or 13 folks, want to make sure that you guys tune in next week for our live series. So again, we have a tool, right? Hype Auditor has a great tool for analyzing influencers, analyzing brands, analyzing competitors. So we're diving into using some of our competitor and brand analysis tools to assess what happened over Cyber 5, who was winning, who was losing in different verticals, why, what kind of partnerships are going on, all in the moment, right? So if you're just kind of curious about how things look, if you already have some of these functionalities and you want to figure out how to use them better, it's a great reason to tune in. Just kind of curious at what happened over Cyber 5 outside of your space. Definitely would invite you to join. And so with that, I want to thank everybody for joining today. Once again, if you have folks on your team that weren't able to make it or other folks that you think might find this interesting, you can share that link that you're on now. It will be available via YouTube so people can watch that recording. Feel free to send along any questions you might have. But I want to thank everybody again for the time, especially right ahead of Thanksgiving and Cyber 5. Best of luck over this period of time. Be patient. Give it some time. You've done all of the prep, right? So now is when you can really, really see those results. I did just get a question from Chloe. Is it possible to gain access to the social lawyer webinar you mentioned earlier? Yes, you can. We will share a link to it, I think, in the comments after this. That'll be the easiest place to do it. I don't want to pull it up right now, though maybe I can try. Let's just see real quick. We did this about 2 months ago, and we learned a lot of great things around just sort of essentials for partnerships with influencers around contracting, when you should have contracting, hint always you should have contracting. And it was just a great webinar. And if you bared with me while I was stalling, here's a link to that webinar. I just posted it in the chat as well. So it was myself and that's my name, but the social media lawyer. And with that, I'll thank everybody again, once again, for your time. Best of luck out there this holiday season, and I'll see you in about a week. Thank you.